Welcome back to the Life Well Led podcast, everybody. Today I've got a gentleman on by the name of Brandon Ward. He is an entrepreneur, a startup founder, and I think having somebody who's around my age, who's a leader as well, who's started up companies, worked as an individual contributor, but has not done it for a long period of time to get an idea of what our age and what our generation goes through as a leader, not just of their own company, but in their experience as well. Brandon, thank you so much for being here today. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I'm excited to be on. Thanks for inviting me.
That's a pleasure, man. Let's talk about your experience. So, where did you start in your professional world and education, and how'd you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I started with a degree in computer science. I actually went to med school for a year, and I figured out that was not for me.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Well, not med school, but I was pre-med for the
Pre-med, we
year,
got you.
and I figured out that was not for me. So I went back to computer science, which was my original lifelong plan anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, degree from the University of Alabama, and then I got an MBA afterwards. I've worked at a large corporation. I've worked at mid-stage startups. I worked at an early stage startup. I've tried to start multiple ventures with myself and with friends, and now I'm building my own startup, Keisha AI.
Very good. I'd love to talk about that a little bit later as well, as far as Keisha AI goes. But I do want to learn and have the audience learn as well. Like, what did you learn from going from an individual contributor to starting up startup with a partner, I should say, and then ultimately starting up on your own? What have you learned along the way so far in terms of leadership as well as any other lessons?
Yeah, I'll go a step back from that, and I will say
Sure.
that it actually started as a young child, maybe not so young, but being the oldest out of three siblings who are, I'm 8, 6, and 10 years older than. There's a huge age gap,
Right.
and so I was almost like the micro parent of the house. I had to take care of the siblings, pick them up from school, help them with their homework. I would even cook dinner. Um, it got to the point where I would just automatically do it, and my parents wouldn't have to even, ask me to do it, or my siblings, instead of asking mom or dad, they would come to me and say, "Hey, can you do this?" And so I think it started there. Honestly, it just became a instinct. And I think if anyone is the oldest child listening to this, you might understand it's a curse and a gift at the same time, having to be the role model. But I learned there that people follow you when they know that you have their back. I think that's the primary thing. Like all my managers at my companies, the ones that I like the most, I always felt like they had my back. I don't know if they did or not. From what I've seen, it felt like they did. But just, communicating that to me, it made me want to go the extra mile. And so I learned that as an individual contributor, but also there are things that was just very different. And I had a completely different view of leadership before I actually started reading books and learning
Interesting.
about it. When I got my first job, I would do a task and, a decision would come down the pipeline. And I really wouldn't understand. I would say, why is it done this way? This is stupid. This is ridiculous. Like, what?
Yeah.
And I look back now that I'm starting my own company, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I get. There's a things change when you look at it from a different perspective, and being a leader, it requires taking into account a lot of different perspectives. So working at a large corporation, you definitely have a different perspective because everything is so siloed. Whereas
Yes.
when I moved to a startup, I got my perspective broadened because now you're exposed to every aspect of the business, the financials, sales team, the marketing team, the product
Mm-hmm.
team. I mean, even though I was a software engineer, I'm on the call listening to, the marketing team's update. And that gives you a much wider perspective. And so when leadership made a decision, now I can say, oh, I understand that even though I'm an individual contributor.
Interesting you bring that up. And I think the tie-in might be is that when you realize that people, if they have your back as a leader, that you as a leader are understanding somewhat, whether it's explicitly saying I have your back or making it very well known through their actions, is that they understand your perspective. What do you think on that perspective, on that line of thinking?
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. Like when they understand your perspective, it helps. And it makes you want to understand their perspective as well. Empathy is, it may be the number one aspect of leadership if I had to pick,
Wow.
one trait.
That's a great point. And honestly, I would agree with you on a lot of that because when it comes to dealing with people, having a tremendous amount of empathy can get you very far. And I think you know, just from my perspective as a coach and a consultant, is that the empathy that can be used is not what people think it. In reality, it's about tactically understanding who you're talking to, what their perspective is, and giving them the acknowledgement and validation of their own experience that they have.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts? I mean, if you want to elaborate on that, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there needs to be mutual empathy. But as a leader, I think you have to make the first move. It's like a chessboard. It's like
Mm.
if you're leading a team, you have to make the first move of empathy if you want to receive it back.
I think that goes for trust too, right? If
Hmm.
you're able to give trust first, then you're going to get trust back versus rather than earn it and make people earn it and go through a whole system of micromanaging and mistrust and going through like hurdles, give the trust up front and either it's theirs to lose or break or theirs to continue to earn and reciprocate back. In reading, you had mentioned that you're reading books as well. And I noticed that one of the courses you took, even though it's not necessarily a book, but we also kind of connected over a course that you're taking on ethics with Harvard X, the Foundation of Leadership Principles. How have you been doing with that one so far?
Yeah, I am really enjoying the course. I'm not too far in. I'm on the second module, but
Hmm.
so far I've already had a couple light bulb moments. The biggest takeaway from me for me so far is the metaphor of get on the balcony. If you're a
Yes.
leader, oversee things. And I love this metaphor because it's a great visualization. And imagine yourself in a club on a dance floor and you're dancing. If you're next to me, I can only see you and what's going on, in my immediate vicinity. But if I get on the balcony and I look down on the dance floor, I'll see some people are dancing slow, some people are dancing fast, some people are not even dancing at all. Some
Yes.
people are making side deals, probably selling something illegal. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's a lot going on. And so I feel like if you're a leader of an organization, getting on the balcony is crucial when making decisions. You can't just make a dance move based off of who's next to you. You have to really get on the balcony and say, okay, this is going on here. How does it connect? What should I fix? Or what is going on that I don't know about that's actually amazing that I should promote? There's all these aspects.
It's I went through that course as well. I have finished it, and you got a great insight as to what you picked up on. And one of the things that I had learned, not just from that course but from other studies in that similar field, adaptive leadership, was as a leader you have to be able to get on the balcony and on the dance floor and be able to shift between the two at any given point. So you're
Hmm.
not just there being a thought leader and you're able to observe and espouse those values, but also be able to get on the dance floor and get the work done with those that are with you.
Yeah.
That balcony and dance floor example, how has that applied to you in your business so far, or given you any insight or inspiration?
Yeah, I think at this stage it's a bit early for me because we're a very small team of 4 people.
Hmm.
So my vicinity is a little bit different. If I'm dancing
Fair.
in a club and there's only 4 people in it, I can see
You can see all four
I can see
people, right?
everything without getting on the balcony. So I haven't gotten to that point yet. And I think that's a gift with startups. If your team is small enough and you're lean enough, the balcony is the dance floor. I think that's where I am. But as we grow and as we scale, I can definitely see the need of, because once you start delegating things and what you assign takes a life of its own and you don't know what's going on, you're definitely going to have to get on the balcony and like look and say, hey, okay, let's double check this. And I would go so far as to say not just you getting on the balcony, but when you go back to the dance floor, you have to, let everyone else know what you saw when you were on the
Yes.
balcony.
Yep. That's exactly it, and that's what they teach, and that's ultimately what I try to coach on as well. Is here's the observations that I had made, but you can also take a rental, not an ownership of the observations, and say one person might observe that X had happened. That way, you're not giving somebody the assigned guilt of, oh, I'm putting it on you, but hey, somebody might interpret that situation as X.
Hmm.
So if we take that interpretation, what might that, how might we change our thoughts and opinions on that way? So to your point, yeah, definitely bringing that to the dance floor with everybody else. From what you observed, whether you do as a full ownership or as a rental of somebody might see it this way, you're still bringing that information. Any other leadership books that you have read that you feel like the audience would love to learn from and build from?
Yeah, I think my favorite is well, maybe two.
Go
First
for it.
one is Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. Um, some people may not like it because he uses a lot of military tactical language, and the business is not really life or death. I mean, it can be, but it's not military life or death. But
Right.
still, a lot of the same principles apply. And I honestly did not expect the book to go the way that it did when I read it. I thought it was going to be like, I'm a leader, follow me, listen to me, this is my order. But what I found was Jocko is like, hey, as a leader, you have to listen and you have to be led. You have to make it so that your team leads. So leadership doesn't start at the top of the chain; it starts from the bottom and it goes up. And that was the biggest, like, I think, realization, especially being an individual contributor. Because I always thought, well, I'm not really a leader. But after reading that book, I realized, no, we are all leaders. It doesn't matter if you are an individual contributor or middle manager or C-suite exec. The leadership goes up the chain and back down. And I think that was like the most, like, that was the light bulb moment from reading that book.
What's the other book you wanted to mention?
Yeah. I'm thinking of multiple books right now. I'm thinking of like two books, but one was Crucial Conversations and the other was Brené Brown, Dare to Lead.
Oh, that's a phenomenal book, by the way.
And
If you haven't
it
read that one, you need to read Brene Brown's
is
Dare
really
to
good.
Lead.
Yeah, yeah. And I kind of get them crossed up because I read them back to back. So some of the concepts I get I get confused on, but the overall principle that I really like was communication. And this is where empathy comes into play as well. Communication plus empathy
Hmm.
and open communication, not just talking and saying, okay, you really want to hear what the person means, not quite what they say, because what they say might not be what they mean, or it may not
Hmm.
be how they intended it to come out. So just sitting, holding space to have a real open conversation, and don't just close it at yes or no. You know, ask questions that, say why. Why do you feel this way? What is the reason? Because somebody might say something that makes you mad, and you might take it one way, and the person actually had a whole nother reason for doing it. And you're now, on this mismatched
Hmm.
communication level, harboring, like, bad intentions or whatever over a period of time, when really it wasn't even that big of a deal. Like, this person was thinking about something else. They weren't trying to cut you off. They weren't trying to undermine you. You just have to understand it. So both Crucial Conversations and Dare to Lead, I think they really showed me the importance of open communication with your team.
You had mentioned earlier that empathy is probably the greatest thing that you can do in business, or at least to something of that extent. But I remember our conversation before we got on the air, and you had mentioned that communication was a part of that too. And I think that that's really important to say that empathy has its roots in communication
Yeah,
when it
yeah.
comes to business or leadership. What do you think on that in terms of when you do become a leader? How do you emphasize your importance of communication when you lead?
Yeah, that is the hardest one that I'm still trying to figure out. Communication is like, I don't know, a stock chart. It goes up and down. Like, some days
Hmm.
you're open, and is very much driven by your emotions too.
Hmm.
And so you have to keep that in check, because if I'm angry one day, my communication might show that, and I may not mean that. Or if I'm very happy, I may overpromise on things. So you have to be aware, too. I think it starts with awareness, because
Yes.
when you have empathy, you have to know what emotions to label.
And to your point of awareness, I like that you went to the other end. It's not just when I'm angry, I show up upset and I come maybe be direct or rude, but you're also when you're happy or too happy, you might just overpromise and then you're under delivering on the other end of it. So keeping your emotions truly in check, that's a great point. So I
Hmm.
think that that's a valuable lesson in and of itself. But being self aware, how you communicate is before you say or type the word out, being able to recognize what your emotion is in the moment and how is that going to actually be affected as you say it.
Hmm.
So that's not necessarily easy, but as you can imagine, if you have that self-awareness and you continue to build it like a muscle, then you have the ability to communicate in a way that's clear, more concise, and gives you the intended result that you're looking for.
Hmm. Yeah, I read in one book, they said, before you send an email, stop and read it 3 times, say it out loud to see, if it's really what you intended to say.
And that's a great place to start because it's hard when you're talking with people. If you're more of a processor, it might be easier, but not everybody is. I know I'm not. I like to talk, but with an email, it's easier to really take a second, think about it, and understand what the tone is, because you can interpret a tone so many different ways just from writing, and you just don't know what that tone's going to be.
Hmm.
So I think that's very important in leadership. You're absolutely right. Um, I want to hear a little bit more about your current venture. Can you talk about it?
Yeah. Keisha AI is the executive assistant for the future for the everyday professional. This actually started with the problem that I was solving for myself, and that is being overwhelmed with task management,
Mm,
overwhelmed with scheduling, overwhelmed with prioritization, follow ups. Just from being an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur, you have a lot of stuff to do, especially if you are a CEO where you're networking. You're probably still doing,
accounting, your
yes,
books, marketing on top of networking. Yeah,
yes,
it's a
you
lot.
already know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, it's tough.
And it's very hard to manage.
Yes.
And I really wanted a personal assistant, but I didn't want to buy one. So I figured why not just build one? And I built a MVP for myself, and it was a quick little texting interface. And I showed it to people, and it was literally I text her and I say, "Hey, I need to do this," and she looks at my calendar and she automatically schedules and prioritizes things for me. And people
Wow.
really liked it. They liked how easy it was to use. They like how I can just do it on the go. How she sent reminders. And I was actually working on a previous project before that, and I ended up abandoning it because this one had more excitement, and I had people who were willing to support me in building the app. My co-founder Deontay helped me build the front end, the entire front end for the app. And with my previous project, no one wanted to help me, and so I was like, "That I guess is not that great of an idea. I guess I'm going to go with this," and that's how that was born.
Man, that is so cool. You took a problem that not only other people would have, but you recognized it in yourself and were able to. I mean, that's just the true blood of an entrepreneur, is taking a problem that other people have and making a solution for it, and using your skill in software engineering
Hmm.
to then become and take it to the next level, from the single contributor to being a partner and now having your own thing. It's amazing. It really is.
Thank you.
Um, how can people find out more about Keisha AI?
Yeah. Keisha.ai. Keisha with the Y. KEYSHA.ai. Go there and sign up for the wait list. Depending on when you're watching this, it may be a wait list or maybe a sign up button. Uh,
Very good. One last question, and I do appreciate you being here and appreciate your time and your thoughts and your insights on leadership as well. But one thing I would like to have for the audience is what you've learned so far in leadership as a entrepreneur and your previous roles to today. What's a lesson that you would pass on to others who are in our age or younger, if they were to go down the leadership route as an entrepreneur?
I would say start with reading books. Those two books that I recommended are probably the best place to start, in my opinion.
Yep.
You really get a lot of knowledge from there. And not just books, look at or analyze leaders that you've previously interacted with. That's a really good place to start too, because we've all had great managers and we're like, wow, they were amazing, or great bosses. We've all had bosses who were like, not so much. So that's another good point. Like, experience is the best education.
I love that. You're absolutely right. I mean, I do that in myself when I try to coach and consult is, here's a great leader I had in my experience. What was their attributes? And then also what leader I wouldn't want to be and what I wouldn't want to pass on to other people.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that, and also just learning from other people based on what they wrote and based on their experience
Yeah.
too.
And there's a third one.
Yeah.
I would say looking inward, because there's a lot of experiences that we have personally that if we analyze it, we will learn from ourselves. So I've looked back at situations where I could have been a better leader, even though I wasn't necessarily, the CEO of a company.
Hmm.
I could have been a better leader. And I look back like, wow, I could have done this. I should have done that. Those are maybe the best lessons where you're like, I should have done this. I could have done that. Take that and just don't make the same mistake.
It's about learning what, even when you fail, it's still failing forward, right,
Hmm.
Brandon? It's about learning from that opportunity to not make the mistake again, but also it's data. And if you're just from an analytical point of view, that data is going to help you move forward in the best way possible. So
Hmm.
experience is the key. You're not moving forwards, you're moving backwards. And so don't be stagnant, because you end up moving backwards anyways. Continue to move forward, fail forward, and learn. Anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
That is it for now. I'll do another plug for Keisha,
Please do.
Keisha AI. That's Keisha with a Y. Or you can follow me on Instagram at soul_808. The history of my name is for another podcast episode. But yeah, that's about me. Thanks for having me, Eric.
Pleasure. I'd love to have you as a recurring guest as well. Brandon Ward, everybody, at Keisha AI. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.